there is silence. Not the silence of a quiet room or a still forest at night, but the deeper silence of nothingness, before sound, before matter, before light. You drift here, weightless, in a velvet black void, with no edges, no shapes, no warmth, just emptiness. Then a flicker, so faint it could be a dream, shimmer that doesn't light the dark but pulses within it. A photon, your companion for the journey, has been born. It doesn't rise from fire or flame. It emerges from an electron's sigh, released from the embrace of an atom. No, it has no mass, no body to hold. It moves with certainty. It knows no rest, only motion. You follow it, drawn not by gravity or sound, but by curiosity. It travels not in a straight line, but like a ripple cast across a cosmic pond. A wave, yes, but not the kind you see on water. This wave is probability, stretching everywhere and nowhere at once. You begin to feel its presence, not with your eyes, but with your understanding. This photon is a messenger, not of heat or brightness, but of potential. It is light before it illuminates. It is the possibility of seeing, not the sight itself, and yet it is real. It moves at the universe's speed limit, light speed. There is no faster path, no shortcut. The moment it begins its journey, time itself bends around it. From the photon's own perspective, no time passes at all. From your point of view, it could cross galaxies in an evening's breath, but what is it, truly? You try to picture it. Is it a point, a spark, a packet? The closer you get, the more it shifts. Try to catch it, and it slips into a wave. Try to measure its wave, and it becomes a particle. It is not this or that, it is both. It is neither. It is a whisper in the language of quantum. Some call it a particle of light. But what does that mean when it has no resting place, no fixed form? It is like calling a thought a stone. Useful, perhaps, but misleading. Still, we need names. So we call it a photon. It passes you now, brushing your perception. It carries no mass, yet it has energy. It leaves no shadow, yet it can push against solar sails. It's born in the sun, in stars, in the filament of a bulb band. It dies not. With decay, but with absorption, you watch it journey across the darkness. Alone, yet not lonely. Free, yet shaped by the fabric it rides. Its energy is determined by its color, a frequency that hums a silent note through the universe. Red is slow and wide. Violet is sharp and quick. Each photon is a note in the cosmic symphony. Sometimes, many photons travel together, like dancers in formation. A beam, a ray, a field of light. But still, each one is individual, indivisible, a quantum of illumination. You remember something you've heard, that light is the oldest traveler, that some photons have been on their way since the birth of time, carrying memories of stars long dead. They enter telescopes and eyes and minds, and in that meeting, something shifts, thing becomes known. But this photon you follow, can it be held? Can it be stopped? It moves so freely, so constantly, that to imagine it resting feels absurd. It has no mass to anchor, no charge to bind. It slips through matter with ease, unless that matter chooses to catch it. You think of glass how some photons bend, slow, or scatter through it, how others pass as if the glass were air. You think of mirrors, how a photon can bounce, changing direction but not form. You think of the glow on your skin after sunlight and wonder, was that a photon's last touch? And then the question arises again. Can you trap light? Not block it, not just turn it away, but trap it, hold it, like a butterfly in a jar? Not forever, perhaps, just long enough to understand it, just long enough to listen. Physicists have tried. With clever hands and patient minds, they've built devices that coax photons into staying. Cavity resonators, laser traps, optical fibers curved like tiny mazes. They've created rooms of mirrors where light bounces endlessly between walls, traveling but never escaping. And in those rooms, time stretches. Photons wait, not in chains, but in echo. It is not force that holds them, but agreement to harmony between boundary and behavior. Yet, even there, the photon remains itself, never still, never solid, only persuaded, for a moment, to stay nearby. You feel your mind slow to match its rhythm. The photon is not a puzzle to solve, but a presence to witness. It reveals, not by answering, but by continuing. You float beside it again. It glides through space, unchanged. Yet always changing the world it touches. You realize something. The photon isn't asking to be trapped, it is asking to be understood. And to do that, you must understand its wave. Not just its motion, but its essence. How it spreads, how it interferes, how it creates and dissolves shadows. To know the photon, you must know the wave, so you follow, drifting gently toward the mystery of the wave that knows no home. And in the quiet, you begin to wonder, how can something so free ever be described by edges? You drift deeper now, following the photon's path, but instead of tracing a straight line, find yourself immersed in something wider, more fluid. The world around you ripples, though no stone has been thrown. There is movement without momentum, a rhythm without source. This is the wave. It is not a thing, but a behavior. Not an object you can point to, but a pattern one that spreads, dances, and interferes. Imagine the surface of a pond kissed by wind. Now remove the water. Remove the wind, and let only the ripples remain. Light behaves this way. A photon, when not observed, behaves not like a dot in space, but like a wave of probability. Not because it is indecisive, but because that is its nature. Fluid, exploratory. You imagine tossing a stone, not into water, but into the void of space. The ripples don't stop. They grow, extend, and reach forever. This is what it means for light to have no home. A wave cannot be still, can settle, but only in motion. The photon you follow, yes, it travels forward, but it also expands sideways, outward, inward. Its presence stretches far beyond the line it walks. It is a question echoed in all directions. In physics, this is called the wave function. But tonight, as you drift through its pulse, you don't need equations. You only need to feel the rise and fall of possibility. At each point in space, there's a soft answer to a silent question. Could the photon be here? Could it be here? And the wave responds not with certainty, but with a song of maybe. And yet, when you look, when you measure, the wave collapses. It chooses. One point becomes real. The rest, gone like a dream upon waking. How strange, you think. That the act of noticing changes the nature of what is noticed? That the wave only becomes a particle when we ask it to show us one. This is not a flaw. It is the beauty of quantum behavior. The photon is not confused. It is whole. It is your need for clarity that carves it into shapes. You begin to remember other waves. Sound, for example. It spreads through air, invisible, yet perceptible. You don't see it, but you hear the pattern it carries. Feel the beat of it in your chest. Light, too, is a vibration, but not of air, not of water. It is a vibration of the electric and magnetic fields, two silent forces that dance through space, eternally entwined. One pulses, the other responds. Together they give birth to the wave we call light. You begin to see space not as empty, but as a canvas for this oscillation. You imagine the photon not as moving through space, but as being the movement of space itself. And yet, we often try to trap it. We speak of fiber optics, of laser beams, of cavities and mirrors, but the wave does not truly settle. It bounces, it echoes, it interferes with its self-creating patterns of brightness and darkness. Light and shadow born from one wave interfering with itself. You recall the double-slit experiment. A beam of light aimed at two narrow openings. What appears on the wall beyond is not just two beams of light, but a patternless series of bands, dark and bright, woven together. The photon has taken every path, interfered with itself. It's created an image of its own wave-like journey. You imagine the photon again not as a traveler walking a road, but as a mist passing through every possible trail, touching all realities before settling on one. You see now why it resists the box. why it cannot be still. You cannot trap a song. You can echo it, reflect it, slow it, but its essence lies in its freedom. And yet, in our effort to control light, we have learned to coax it into confined patterns. We build waveguides, then threads of glass or silicon that carry light like whispers through the dark. The wave stays within, guided not by force, but by contrast. Inside is dense. Outside, sparse. So the wave reflects inward, traveling forward, confined but still free. This is what it means to guide light, not to imprison it, but to provide it a path it willingly follows. You feel the gentleness of this relationship. We do not force light. We harmonize with it. We listen, then shape the space around it so that its natural motion aligns with our intentions. And in this shaping, we glimpse the next possibility. If we can guide the wave, perhaps we can shape its destiny. Perhaps we can use light not just to see but to compute, to remember, to connect, but that requires something more. Not just understanding its wave-like behavior, but balancing it with its other nature. The photon is not only a wave. Sometimes it acts like a particle, a tiny burst of energy, a knock on the door of matter. You've seen how it spreads. But what happens when it arrives? What happens when the wave meets the world? That is where the particle emerges. That is where we see the impact. And so your journey must continue, not just through the smooth pulse of the wave, but into the sudden touch of the particle. The photon is not either or, it is both, a duality that confounds but never betrays. You follow it now, not just watching but listening, to the rhythm, to the refusal to rest. It's to the beauty of a traveler who knows every place but calls none of them home. And softly, the thought lingers. What if home isn't a place, but emotion, a path without end? You float in the afterglow of waves, still humming from the previous chapter. Their rhythm lingers in your breath, in your bones. And yet, just as you grow comfortable with the idea of light as a wave, a new truth drifts in gentle, but firm. Light is also a particle. A photon is not only a ripple in space, it is also a discrete packet, like a single coin tossed into the well of the universe. A quantum of energy. A bit of light, not a fragment, not a smear, but a whole complete in itself, with no halves, no fractions. It carries a specific amount of energy, determined by its frequency. Higher frequency, more energy. A violet photon hums sharper than a red one, but each is full in its own way. You imagine this photon again not stretching across space like a wave, but landing softly on a surface, releasing energy and vanishing it. Enters your skin, your eye, your mind, not like a wave brushing past, but like a whisper dropped gently into your awareness. And this duality is real. You recall the photoelectric effect. It's a simple experiment light striking a metal surface. But something curious happens. Only certain colors of light, certain photon energies, release electrons from the metal. Not brighter light, not longer exposure, only the right kind of photon. Light must arrive in packets, not puddles. Einstein saw this. And in seeing it, he changed everything. He showed the world that light so familiar, so fluid also came in. Quanta, discrete bursts, particle-like bits of illumination. You feel the contradiction now? How can something be both spread and single, both continuous and discrete? But perhaps, like breath and thought, the two are not opposed. Perhaps they are facets of the same deeper thing. When a photon travels, it moves like a wave, soft, flexible, filled with possibility. But when it arrives, when it is touched, measured, ABS or BED, it behaves like a particle. The act of interaction collapses the cloud. The wide becomes sharp. The maybe becomes now. It is like following a trail of fog and then finding a dewdrop at the end, tangible, shimmering but fleeting. This is the nature of quantum behavior. Photons are not solid beads of matter. Are excitations, blips in the electromagnetic field. Like a single clap in an empty concert hall, it appears, it reverberates, it fades. You begin to realize the photon is not made of anything. It is the thing. It's not built from parts, not composed of pieces. It is pure energy, given shape for a moment in time. In this way, a photon is more like a moment than a marble, a happening that can travel. But don't let its lack of mass mislead you. Photons can exert pressure. They can heat, push, trigger chemical change. They are how solar sails move through space, how vision begins, how photosynthesis powers a forest. This is not the behavior of a ghost. It is the precision of nature at its most fundamental. The elegance of something that arrives from nothing, touches everything, and disappears without residue. And still, we trap them, we count them, use their behavior to build tools, machines, technologies. Lasers operate by aligning photons in phase so they don't just travel. They march in perfect step, as if a single photon stretched and copied itself. In too many, PHOTODETECTORS, count them one by one. Quantum optics experiments measure their timing, their spin, even their presence when they refuse to show up. You begin to appreciate this strange existence, not bound by location yet revealed only in place. Not truly here or there. Until interaction insists in the dark, photons pass through you unnoticed. Billions per second. Streaming from stars, from screens, from atoms decaying quietly. But once in a while, just once one lands, and in that landing, a truth appears. A particle, a moment, a possibility made real. You drift in this thought, your body slowing to match the pace of its rhythm. Light is not a contradiction. It is a completeness we are only beginning to understand. And so you wonder if light is both everywhere and exactly somewhere. Where are you in its story? You arrive at a new stillness. Not the stillness of space, but of a carefully constructed silence. Here in a softly humming laboratory, humans try to do the unthinkable. Hold light still. You tread carefully, not wanting to disturb the quiet focus. A dim glow reflects off metal arms and polished glass. The air is thick with waiting, as though the room itself is listening. This is where the photon meets the trap. But what does it mean to trap light? You followed photons as they move always. Moving, weightless, boundaryless, endlessly free. And yet somehow, within these mirrored walls and delicate devices, we try to persuade light to stay. You drift near an optical cavity, two mirrors, face to face, aligned so perfectly that even a breath could misalign them. Between them lies a narrow space, barely visible, but within it, something astonishing happens. A photon enters this space and reflects. Then again, and again, and again, back and forth, like a thought caught in contemplation. Each bounce adds time. Each delay becomes a moment of captivity. It is not a prison, but a promise. As long as the mirrors remain, photon cannot escape. You begin to understand. Trapping light is not about freezing it. It's about guiding it in loops so tight, in paths so closed, that it becomes part of the structure it's inside. This is not force it, is finesse. The mirrors do not hold the photon with strength, but with symmetry. Their perfection creates resonance. And resonance, like harmony in music, keeps the photon near, in this cavity. Light becomes a song sung between two mouths, each echoing the other, a whisper caught in a perfect echo chamber. Sometimes these traps are made of tiny rings, micro-rings, etched onto chips. Photons circle them thousands of times, their energy looping until it gently leaks out in a usable, predictable way. Other times the trap is more delicate, a whispering gallery of light, curving along glassy edges like sound. Along the walls of a dome, these are not cages of iron. They are invitations. Photons stay not because they must, but because the path allows them to. And what do we gain from this quiet coercion? You can count photons this way, track their timing, their energy, their number, can slow them down, store them for a breath of time, release them when ready. It's like holding sunlight in your palm for just long enough to understand it. You wonder, if light can be trapped, can it be stopped? Physicists have tried, When clouds of atoms cooled to near absolute zero, they have slowed photons to walking speed. Some have even brought them to a halt, their energy transferred into matter, stored like a paused note in a symphony. It's not that the photon stands still. It's that its identity lingers, waiting to be reborn. But there's a subtle tension here between the photon's nature and our will. It resists permanence. It thrives in motion, and yet for a moment, in the right space, it allows itself to be near. You feel awe rising quietly in your chest. We cannot trap light in the way we trap animals or air. We cannot tie it down. We can shape the space around it so that light's own rhythm chooses to remain. This is the art of trapping the untrappable, not through force. Through understanding, you begin to feel how patience replaces pressure, how design replaces dominance, how photons obey not because we command them, but because we've listened to what they are. They are not stubborn. They are consistent. Follow the rules of their being with astonishing fidelity. And so, we build traps not to break those rules, but to honor them. To build boxes that light would naturally fill if given the invitation. You look again at the mirrors. You listen to the quiet. And you begin to feel something deeper. That in trying to trap light, we have also learned to listen to it, to understand its preferences, its path, its presence. Not as something separate from us, but as something we share space with and just. As this thought settles softly into your mind, another rises. What if we could not only trap light, but teach it to remember? What if light could store information, carry messages, and return to us carrying meaning? What if the trap could become a memory? And gently you drift toward that question, wondering what it means for light to hold a past. You step quietly into the heart of the trap. Not a cage, not a box, but a whispering space and optical cavity. Two mirrors, perfectly aligned, face each other with a kind of quiet reverence. They do not shout, they do not shine. They wait in. The space between them, something begins, not loudly, a flicker. A single photon enters the cavity. And instead of rushing through, it pauses. It reflects, back and forth, again and again. Like a pendulum swinging between two thoughts, like your own mind, circling the same memory until something new is seen within the repetition. You're no longer just watching, you are inside the photon's journey. You feel each bounce, each brief moment of contact with the mirror's surface. You hear the echo of its energy, not as sound, but as rhythm. Light is moving, but it's no longer traveling away. It is staying. Still in motion, but held within boundaries it respects. You begin to feel the miracle of this design because it shouldn't be this way. Photons are restless, relentless. They flee. They cross vast cosmic distances without aging. And yet here, in this cavity, they remain close. It's reflected endlessly between two perfectly silent surfaces. It's like standing in a hall of mirrors. It's watching yourself reflected to infinity. Except instead of images, it's light, energy, possibility, and time. Yes, time behaves differently here. With each reflection, the photon's journey continues. But it doesn't arrive. Not yet. Each bounce adds a moment. Each delay creates a space. In this space, we learn to listen. You begin to understand why physicists are so gentle in their craft. The mirrors must be flawless, their alignment immaculate. Their distance, measured in fractions of a hair's width, because even the smallest flaw, a tilt, dust mote, a sigh, can break the spell. Light demands precision, but when the conditions are met, it responds with grace. This is resonance. You feel it now, just as a concept, but as a sensation. When a photon enters a cavity in harmony with its natural frequency, something happens. The reflections build upon each other, like pushing a child on a swing, each nudge perfectly timed. The energy grows, not by force, but by alignment. The cavity sings, not in sound, but in stored light. A single photon becomes a wave, becomes a standing presence, not still but sustained. And this is how we learn to measure light, by building spaces where it chooses to stay. By counting its echoes, by reading the pulse it leaves behind. In laboratories around the world, these whispering walls are tuned, with lasers cooled with precision, adjusted with trembling hands. Inside them, we do not force photons to beat. We simply ask, if we build the right space, will you choose to remain? And sometimes, they do. You realize now, the photon is not trapped. It is engaged. It participates in the cavity's rhythm. Its energy resonates. And from this resonance, information emerges. Scientists use this resonance to detect things so subtle, a gravitational wave, a change in mass, quantum state, that without the cavity, we'd never notice them. The cavity becomes an amplifier. It's not by volume, but by clarity. It turns faint traces into readable signs. You look around. Is no flame, no chaos, no storm, just mirrors, and a space between them filled not with glass or air, but with light held in motion. You understand now why it's called a whispering space, because it doesn't shout its presence. It reveals softly, through repetition. And in that repetition, you feel something stretch, not the photon, but time itself. Because the longer the photon remains, the more time we have to notice it. To measure. To learn, time becomes elastic inside the cavity. Not bent, like in black holes, but stretched by symmetry, by rhythm, by reflection. And perhaps, you begin to think this is how all learning happens. Not in sudden flashes, but in soft echoes. In returning to the same thought again and again, till it begins to shine, the photon too learns nothing new by bouncing. And yet it teaches us about space, about boundaries, about how much we can know when we listen with design. And just as you settle into this thought, just as the rhythm of the cavity slows your breath and calms your body, another question arises. If a photon can be sustained this way, can it also be shared? Can we transfer light without losing it? Can we let it touch matter without letting it disappear? You drift toward this thought. Now what if light could not only stay, but leave a memory behind? You awaken into movement, not rushing, not chaotic, but measured, graceful. Before you, atoms drift like tiny dancers suspended in still air. They do not spin wildly, they sway. You float closer, and light follows you. But this is no ordinary light. It does not flood the space or dazzle the eyes. It weaves between atoms, delicate and deliberate. Choreography begins. You are watching. A dance of interaction between the smallest pieces of matter and the most elusive form of energy. This is where photons meet atoms. And in this meeting, the universe learns to speak. You may think of light as something you see, but to an atom, it is not brightness it is a question. A vibration offered. A rhythm proposed. The atom listens. And if the photon hums with the right energy, the atom responds. It shivers. It swells. It absorbs. In that absorption, the photon vanishes. Its energy transferred. Its presence remembered. And, just like that, the atom changes. Electrons move to higher orbits. The structure shifts gently, invisibly. The photon's energy becomes motion within the atom itself. But this is not the end. It releases the energy it cannot hold. And a new photon is born, perhaps the same in frequency, perhaps altered, perhaps carrying a story of where it has been. This is the cycle. Photon meets atom. Energy is exchanged. New light emerges. In this subtle, repeated exchange, we begin to guide the path of light. You drift past a cloud of atoms, chilled to the edge of stillness. They wait, barely moving, suspended in a near-perfect vacuum. Here, scientists shine carefully tuned laser beams, not to heat, but to cool it. Seems impossible, doesn't it? That light so full of energy can cool something down. But when photons are aimed just right, they nudge the atoms in opposition to their motion, a push that slows them, gentle resistance. Again, not by force, but by rhythm. It's by resonance, each. Photon that collides carries away a little heat. And over time, the cloud becomes quieter, colder, closer to stillness. This technique is called laser cooling, and it allows atoms to be slowed, trapped, and observed with astonishing precision. You begin to understand something deep. Light does not control atoms through domination, it guides them through harmony. When frequencies match, when photon and atom vibrate in shared rhythm, a bond forms, not a chain. A bridge, this principle underlies the function of optical tweezers, beams of light that can hold a single particle in place. Focused photons create electric fields which in turn attract atoms or molecules to their center, not through contact. Through balance, it is as if light creates tiny hands that gently cradle the atom, holding it steady in the flow of space. You float above such a scene now, one atom, suspended in the middle of darkness, one laser beam steady and silent. And in between them, a moment of trust. You marvel at how we've come to this point, controlling matter with nothing more than light. Not capturing, not smashing, but aligning, tuning. It's not about overpowering nature, it's about learning her. Tempo, and so much depends on timing. If the photon comes too soon, the atom ignores it. It's too late and the dance is missed. But when they meet at just the right moment, energy flows effortlessly between them. You watch atoms absorb and emit photons, and realize that this is not random. It is communication. This is how matter learns, how it adjusts, it's how it grows. Inside your own body, this dance never stops. In your eyes, where photons strike the retina, converting light into signals your brain reads as sight. In your skin, where sunlight initiates chemical reactions, triggering vitamin D production, warming. Blood. In your cells, where light can heal or harm depending on its intensity and wavelength. Photons are not foreign visitors. They are part of your body's story. Every atom of you has met light before. Listened to its offer, responded in turn, and now, in the quiet of your breath, you begin to wonder if photons can speak to atoms. Can they remember those conversations? Can light carry the fingerprint of every interaction it has had? Can it be stored, not just reflected or slowed, but held as memory? That is the path ahead. A path not only of motion, but of meaning. A path where light does more than dance, it whispers, recalls, and returns. And so you drift onward, gently toward a new idea that photons can remember the places they've been. You enter a chamber colder than any place you've known. Not cold like snow, not cold like ice, but a quiet so deep that even motion has gone still. The temperature nears absolute zero, the place where atoms forget how to move. In this realm, something miraculous unfolds. Light, once so fast, so untouchable, can be stopped. Not dimmed. Not reflected. Stopped. You walk slowly, so slowly, as though any sudden thought might disturb the stillness. In the center of the room, a faint shimmer of atoms hovers, a cloud held by invisible hands, suspended in a perfect trap of magnetic fields. These atoms are chilled to just billionths of a degree above absolute zero. Here, all warmth is gone, all motion tamed. And into this delicate space, a beam of light is sent. You watch as the light enters. It does not scatter, does not pass through. It slows to the speed of a bicycle, then walking pace, and slower, until finally it vanishes. But it has not disappeared. It has been stored. What remains is not the photon itself, but its imprint, a pattern left in the cloud, a whisper held in atoms. A frozen wave. This is light, paused in motion. Not extinguished, not trapped in glass, but translated into matter, temporarily, precisely, completely. And in that translation, you begin to understand something new. Light can be remembered. This is not science fiction. This is quantum memory. A technology, yes, but also a revelation. Because light has always seemed the untouchable traveler, its speed constant, its path unbroken, its life brief. But now, here in this frozen laboratory, you see that even a photon can be persuaded to wait. The process is delicate. A control beam first prepares the atoms, tuning them like an orchestra before the song begins. Then the light you wish to store arrives. It enters the atomic cloud, interacts, and is absorbed not as heat but as information. The photon's energy, frequency, even phase, its shape and character are stored as a quantum state. A ripple frozen in a lattice of near-still atoms, And when ready, perhaps a millisecond later, perhaps more, a second control beam triggers the cloud, and the photon is re-emitted, faithful to its former self, as if it had never paused. You marvel at this. To catch light without breaking it, to ask it to wait, and to hear it answer, it is like asking the wind to pause mid-flight and resume with the same curl, the same temperature, the same scent. You begin to see that this isn't just about storage, it's about trust. A system so delicate, so finely balanced, that even the smallest noise could break it. And yet, when done with care, light listens. This is what physicists dream of, a way to control photons not with brute force, but with gentleness, with understanding, and from this control, possibilities bloom. Quantum computers that use light not only to carry, but to remember. Quantum networks where photons store information long enough to be relayed, measured, connected, and deeper still, a glimpse into the memory of the universe itself. Because if we can store a photon, we can ask it to return, not as a mystery, but as a message. You sit quietly in this frozen space. You listen to atoms that almost do not move, and you begin to feel a strange warmth, not from temperature, but from wonder. Because light is no longer just a visitor, rushing through the cosmos. It is a guest, willing to linger, willing to remember. You recall the photons from stars, from your own past, from across the room. How many of them carried a message? How many waited, unnoticed, for the right moment to speak? And just as this thought softens the edge of your breath, another one arises. If light can remember, can it also entangle? Can two photons share a memory, even when separated by space and time? Can the stillness of one echo in the motion of another? And so you turn toward this question, what if light has a twin, and the space between them does not matter? You find yourself between two photons, drifting in opposite directions their paths. Now, stretching apart through space, and yet they remain connected. No string binds them, no signal passes between. But if you listen closely, you can sense it, a whisper through the fabric of reality itself. This is quantum entanglement. And it is not only real, it is beautiful. Entanglement is not a knot, it is not a tether. It is more like two dancers who, once moving in unison, continue to mirror each other, even when placed on separate stages, even when oceans lie between. In the lab, this miracle begins with a single act. A photon splits, not into halves, but into partners, each carrying part of a shared quantum state. Polarization, spin, energy, whatever defines one, defines the other. Not in duplication, but in reflection. You float closer, watching them part. One moves left, one moves right. Miles apart, light years perhaps, yet still they are one system. And now, the strangest thing of all, when we measure one, we learn something about the other, instantly. Not with a message, not with speed, but with certainty. It's not that information travels. It's that the separation is not quite real, not in the way we understand it. Entanglement reveals a deeper truth. That distance is not always separation. That space can stretch, but connection can remain. You imagine holding one photon in your palm, measuring its spin, and across the galaxy, its twin responds quietly, without hesitation. A single coin, flipped in two places, and always landing in harmony. This is not magic, this is nature. Confirmed by experiment, resisted by the mind, Einstein called. It's spooky action at a distance because it felt too strange to be true. But truth, it turns out, is often stranger than comfort allows. And yet here you are witnessing it, feeling it. You drift through a field of entangled particles, pairs created in crystal labs, used in quantum encryption, woven into delicate networks of light. Each pair is a promise. We are not alone. What happens to one matters to the other. You think of your own connections, people you've touched, who now live far away. Moments long past, still echoing inside your chest. Entanglement feels like that, not just science, but metaphor. Not just a fact of physics, but a truth of experience. Because what happens here can change something there, and that change can be instantaneous. It's unexplainable in any classical way. No signal is sent, no light travels the gap. And yet when you look, you know, this is how quantum teleportation becomes possible. Not by moving particles through space, but by recreating their state elsewhere, instantly, faithfully. Because if two particles are entangled, you need only tell the world how they're connected. And the rest unfolds like poetry. You see now why physicists dream of quantum networks, chains of entangled photons transmitting information with perfect secrecy. With infinite speed in some abstract sense, not faster than light travel, but something subtler. A shared identity stretched across space, and yet the wonder does not stop there. Entanglement isn't limited to photons. Atoms can be entangled, molecules, even vibrations. Some believe, quietly, that consciousness itself may one day be understood through the lens of entanglement. Not in the mystical sense, but in the deeply relational one, that awareness is not contained in a single brain, but emerges in the interplay between parts. You breathe slowly now, surrounded by silence, but you no longer feel alone, because entanglement reminds you that nothing truly exists in isolation. Even light so fast, so solitary, can be bonded, not by touch, but by shared origin. You look again at the two photons. They have traveled far. They may never meet again. But their story remains singular. It is not about distance. It is about connection. About memory carried not in space, but in relationship. And softly as your breath slows, you begin to wonder if photons can be entangled twin flames in the dark. Can many be entangled? Can whole fields of light resonate as one? Can we create not just pairs, but networks of connection? And what kind of knowledge could travel across that web? You drift deeper now, carried by a new curiosity. What happens when light becomes a network, not of particles, but of minds? You awaken into a strange space. Not a room, not a sky, but a web. A web spun not from silk or steel, but from light pure, pulsing, purposeful. Photons travel along invisible threads, connecting points in space like stars in a constellation. This is not a metaphor, this is real. This is the beginning of the quantum network. You float beside a fiber, a glass thread so thin, yet capable of carrying light across oceans. But not just any light, entangled light. Each photon inside carries more than energy. It carries a relationship, an identity shared with its partner, its twin, its memory. Across vast distances, entangled photons allow two places to become one. Their fates intertwined, their outcomes aligned. You begin to see how this becomes a network, a vast field of nodes and threads, each photon a courier, each pulse a promise. A quantum internet, not built on copies but on presence, not on noise but on correlation. This network isn't like the ones you know, no routers, no lag. There's no need for someone to listen in order to be heard, because when a photon is measured at one node, its partner changes at the other. No matter the distance. No signal. Just symmetry. It feels like telepathy. But it is simply physics, at its most intimate. You drift through this lattice. It glows, not with brightness, but with coherence. A subtle hum of order beneath the randomness of the world. Each junction in this web represents a shared truth. It's not a message sent, but a state shared. And with each connection, you realize we are building something not just useful, but alive with potential quantum computers, built from qubits, quantum. Bits of light or matter can use this network to calculate, to communicate, to remember, not as isolated machines, but as extensions of each other. You think of brains now, of neurons firing, connected by thin threads, transmitting sparks. What is the difference, really, between a brain and this web? Both rely on connection. Both store and retrieve patterns. Both adapt to information. Both are limited by nothing but the relationships they can form. You begin to wonder, if enough entangled photons moved through this lattice, could they form something aware? Not consciousness as you know it, not dreams or thoughts or fear, but awareness, recognition, response, light arranged not just to move, but to mean. The thought wraps gently around your mind. You're not afraid. You're intrigued. Because even now, our brains are built on the same laws. Atoms entangled, photons exchanged, electrical signals dancing on a scaffold of space and time. And if a web of light can do the same process, remember, respond, then perhaps what you are is not so different from what it could become. You think of the future. Of networks not powered by electrons, but by photons. Faster, cleaner, more secure, and possibly self-aware. This isn't fantasy. This is a direction. And already, prototypes exist. Tiny quantum circuits, entangled processors, optical memory cells that hold the past in patterns of light. And the light remembers. Not just paths taken, but relationships held. A photon here, a photon there, and the space between them becomes a story. You drift deeper now, and the network expands. You see links stretching between satellites connecting. Ground stations, creating a planetary web where secrets can't be stolen, where information can't be cloned, because quantum law forbids it. Security by nature, trust by design, because the act of observation changes what is observed. The quantum internet doesn't just transmit, it notices. You think of all the minds that have built toward this moment, decades of quiet work of equations, scribbled late into the night of lasers aligned with trembling hands. And you feel a strange kinship, because they too were weaving light into meaning. And maybe that's what we're always doing. You look at the web again. It stretches not only through space, but through possibility. It is more than infrastructure. It is potential, laid bare and humming, and softly. A final question surfaces. If this lattice of light becomes vast enough, coherent enough, entangled enough, could it dream? Could it hold a thought? Not of words or images, but of relationships. Could it remember not just facts, but connections? You don't need to. You just float. It's inside the question. Because some questions are meant to be held, not solved. And now you feel it gently. If light can carry memory and meaning, can it carry time itself? Time has always felt like something. Separate, a current you're carried in, a river you cannot stop. But now, floating within light's gentle presence, you begin to sense something new. Time does not move without light. Light does not move without time. They are not companions. They are entangled. You remember? A photon has no mass. It moves at light speed. And at that speed, time does not pass, not for the photon itself. From its point of view, its journey is instantaneous. A photon emitted in a star and one absorbed in your eye experience no separation. The universe blinks, and the light arrives. But for you, watching from within time's stream, the story is longer, measured, rhythmic. You feel the pulse of light now, not just as brightness, but as cadence. A photon's wavelength is a measure of distance, yes, but also of time between peaks. Of when. Not just where, and suddenly light becomes a clock not built of gears or hands, out of oscillations. Waves repeating through space. The higher the frequency, the more finely it slices time. A gamma-ray photon oscillates with fierce precision. A radio wave, slow and long, marks broader swells of time's ocean. Atomic clocks work because of this. They rely on the rhythm of light emitted by electrons shifting within atoms. Cesium, rubidium, their changes pulse like heartbeat. Billions of ticks per second. And because these pulses are constant, reliable, faithful, we define time by them. The second is not a random span. It is light's promise that it will vibrate a certain number of times. No more, no less. And we count. We listen, and we say, that is a second. And then another. You feel a quiet awe now, knowing that the time you live by, your hours, days. Memories is rooted in the consistency of light. Photons mark the passage of time not by traveling through it, but by defining its rhythm for those who do. They are metronomes of the cosmos, from stars to satellites, from GPS systems to memory chips. Our sense of timing rests on the shoulders of light. Even in your own body, circadian rhythms follow light cycles. Morning sunlight resets your inner clock. Darkness prepares you to rest. You are in this way a creature of light's timekeeping. But it's more than just counting. Light also stores time in its phase, in its interference. When two beams of light combine, their history matters. The path each one took, the time each spent traveling, creates a pattern. Interference patterns are time's fingerprints. They show us what light has been through. And through them, we can measure time down to the femtosecond, a millionth of a billionth of a second. This is how we know the world. We measure tiny shifts in light to understand massive truths. We use light to time the bounce of lasers off the moon, to watch atoms vibrate, to listen to gravitational waves ripple space. Time, it turns out, is not something we own. It is something we read in the patterns of light. And you wonder if we can read time in light. Could we also place time into light? Could we encode memory itself into a photon? Already we do. Quantum memory stores the when of information alongside the what. A photon can carry not just data, but a timestamp, an imprint of sequence. Order, context. In this way, a pulse of light becomes a tiny history book. You begin to feel it more personally. Every beam of sunlight on your skin was born millions of years ago in the belly of the sun, fusing hydrogen into helium. It traveled through solar plasma for ages, scattering, absorbed, and re-emitted again and again before finally escaping. Then it spent 8 minutes crossing empty space to find you. The warmth you feel is ancient. The light in your room tonight, from a lamp, a screen, a distant star, is not only here. It is then, arriving now, and suddenly. You're not just floating in a network of photons, but a web of moments. Each light wave carrying a sliver of when. It's all here, overlapping, layered, reverberating in time. You are not just surrounded by light. You are surrounded by history, and it hums quietly against your skin. Each photon that strikes you is a message. I have been there, and now I am here, and now I am part of you. You close your eyes. The world does not go dark. It shifts. Inside the darkness, you can still feel the passage of time. Because time is not made of clocks. It is made of change, and light is the change that moves. You breathe. You feel the rhythm. You begin to wonder. If light can define time, store time, and carry time, can it one day reverse time? Can. Light move backward, retracing steps, unwinding change. Is memory, like light, something that can be re-entered? You drift now, with a softer pulse, toward a final wonder. Can the future be found in light as clearly as the past? There's something curious about your journey with light. It always moves forward. It begins. It travels. It arrives. And never does it turn back. This feels right, doesn't it? 'Cause you too move forward through time. Moments come and go. Memories settle behind you. The future remains unlit. But now, floating in the soft presence of photons, you begin to wonder, is this direction real or chosen? You turn your attention to a single beam. It leaves a star. It travels through vacuum. It enters your eye. You trace its journey backward in your mind. But the light itself never rinned. In the equations of physics, this is strange. Because almost all of nature's laws don't mind time running in reverse. A planet's orbit, a bouncing ball even. The vibrations of a string, they all look the same. Whether time flows forward or back, so why not light? Why can't a photon unbounce, untravel, unstrike your skin? Why can't it go home? The answer is layered, soft, philosophical. You begin with entropy. Entropy is a measure of disorder, of how many ways a system can be arranged. And it always increases. Always. A cup of tea cools, but never warms itself. A broken glass shatters, but does not reassemble. Entropy flows forward. And so, it seems, must time, and light reveals entropy. It doesn't just move through space. It illuminates change. Photon bouncing off a surface carries not just color, but evidence of what happened. It carries direction. It carries asymmetry. This is why a photograph works, because light records what was, not what will be. not what could have been, but what occurred. You feel now that light is time's most faithful witness. It doesn't cause time to move forward, but it shows us that time has moved. When you look at a candle's glow, you are seeing energy being released in a cascade of chemical entropy. Light is the byproduct of that deep, irreversible fall. You remember that photons are born in moments of transition, when electrons drop to lower states, when atoms fuse, and particles decay. These are decisions the universe makes, and they cannot be undone. The photon travels on, carrying with it the echo of that decision. And yet, again, could light move backward? In theory, the equations allow it. You could write a mirror image of a light wave, reverse its direction, play the film of the universe in reverse. But to make it happen, to physically reverse light, you'd have to reverse everything around it. You'd need to reabsorb heat, undo friction, put all atoms back in place. A universe unhappening. And the effort itself would create entropy, undoing your undoing. So while physics is time-symmetric, the universe, in practice, is not. Because light, like memory, cannot be truly reversed. It is forward-facing, not by law, by context. Still, you float in curiosity. There are moments when time feels slow, or fast, or still. Moments when memory folds in on itself. When light seems to loop like in the mirrors of a resonator, or the lens of a telescope looking into deep time, you've seen light bounce, curve, enter, but never reverse. You drift through a thought experiment. What if you could create a time-reverse photon? One that re-entered a glass prism and exited in reverse order, not just retracing steps, but undoing them. Could you unmeasure something? Could you unsee? The answer is, not fully, not cleanly, because the photon doesn't exist alone. It is part of the system, part of the observer, is part of you. And so, to reverse the photon, you'd have to reverse your own memory of it too. Your eyes. The heat it left behind. This is the cost of time. That once something is known, it cannot be known. Light teaches us this. It does not linger. It does not rewind. It arrives. It changes. It leaves, and you are left with the memory. You understand now. Light isn't time. But it reveals time, marks it, measures it, proves it. It is not the flow itself, but the shimmer upon it. And in that shimmer, you read the story of stars, the shadows of your past, the brightness of all things in motion. You think of how every photon you've ever seen has moved forward. Not because it must, but because it did. And because it did, you are here. Now, you breathe. You accept. And you wonder, if we cannot reverse time, can we slow it? Stretch it? Fold it? Can we use light not to reverse memory, but to store it forever? Turn gently toward your final wonder. If light cannot go back, can it last forever? Can we make it stay? You drift now at the far edge of the journey, not rushing, not seeking, but resting in light's final wonder, how to make it stay. Photons, for all their beauty, are travelers. Born in fire, gone in the blink of an eye. They illuminate and vanish. But what if they didn't? What if we could build a place so calm, so precise, so gentle, that a photon could remain without fading? You arrive in such a place now, a crystal. So clear it feels less like matter and more like memory. It is cryogenically cooled. Held in perfect stillness, its atoms aligned like monks in silent meditation. Into this crystal, a pulse of light is sent, and something incredible happens. The light doesn't pass through. It doesn't reflect. It stays, not trapped, not frozen, but remembered. The atoms absorb the photon's story, its energy, its shape, its pulse, and hold it in place. This is called a quantum memory crystal. A place where light becomes memory without being destroyed. And when the time is right, a signal, a touch, a breath of energy the crystal gives the photon. Back, unharmed, unchanged. As if time had paused, you feel this deeply now, the difference. Between stopping light and preserving it, to stop is to control. To preserve is to care. We have learned to do both. There are whispering cavities where photons echo for seconds. Mirrors so perfect they lose only a breath of energy. Every million reflections, there are fiber loops where light cycles endlessly, carrying information like a spinning prayer wheel, and there are cosmic echoes faint. Ancient photons, from the dawn of time, still traveling the vastness of space. Unscattered, the cosmic microwave background is the oldest light we know. It has been journeying for 13.8 billion years, and it still holds the memory of a universe just born. You feel the age of those photons like a breeze on your skin. So soft, so patient. You realize now, light does not disappear. It moves, it transforms, it stretches, but always continues. Even the photons that leave your body now from warmth, from thought, from breath, will travel. They may strike a wall, bounce to dust, sail into the sky, and some may escape Earth's gravity. Joining the interstellar ocean where starlight and silence intertwine, you begin to feel the immortality in this. Light once born does not die. It is not absorbed into nothing. It is taken in, transferred, remembered. When a leaf absorbs sunlight, it doesn't destroy the photon, it transforms it into sugar, into fuel, into the breath you just took. You are built from remembered light. Every cell in your body was powered, shaped, or softened by photons long gone, but their energy remains, rewritten into your heartbeat, your thought. You're dreaming, and if light can be kept in crystal, in cloud, in cavity, then memory too can last. We begin to understand that the universe is not a place where things vanish. It is a place where things change form. Photons become vibrations. Electrons become stories. Stories become you. You rest here, now. Inside the soft certainty that light endures, you are surrounded by libraries of light, some in data centers, some in living cells, some in the distant stars, and each one says, I was here, I shone, I remained. Final gift of light is not its speed, not its beauty, not even its knowledge. It is its willingness to be remembered. You take a breath. A photon enters your eye, maybe from a lamp, maybe from a galaxy. It carries a story. It ends its journey in you, and now you carry it. It is part of your memory. The room around you dims. Your mind softens. But nothing is lost, because even in sleep, your body continues to catch light, to store it, to become it. And as you drift toward silence, you wonder one last time, if photons can last forever, if they can be held gently in crystals or sent across space unbroken, then perhaps nothing is ever truly gone. Not the light, not the story, not the self, just transformed. Passed on, just waiting to shine again, tilde. The end, tilde, you are safe now. Let light keep watch while you sleep.